A lot of players trying to catch me up. They study my game. They study how I play, trying to beat me, trying to challenge me.
Carlos Alcaraz is staring at a ranking fall that once seemed impossible. At 23, the former world number one has watched injury erase tournaments, points, and precious momentum. Now his place inside the world's top three is under threat, and the cruelest opponent on tour is not holding a racket. It is the calendar. One more delay could change his seeding, his US Open path, and the balance of men's tennis. Here is everything behind Alcaraz's heartbreaking slide, the numbers squeezing him, the rivals gaining ground, and the decision that could either save his season or damage far more than a ranking. If you want breaking tennis stories the moment the pressure changes, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment telling us whether Alcaraz should return quickly or protect his wrist for as long as necessary. Now, let us get into it. The first fact matters. Alcaraz has not suddenly forgotten how to play tennis. His forehand has not lost its violence. That ridiculous drop shot has not applied for retirement. The problem began with his right wrist, an injury that became more serious than his team initially hoped and forced him away from the biggest stages of the season. Back in February, the picture looked completely different. Alcaraz opened 2026 with 12 straight victories. He won the Australian Open, completed the career Grand Slam, and then collected another trophy in Doha. His serve looked stronger, his movement looked sharp, and the rest of the tour appeared to be chasing a player who had found another gear. Then the entire story flipped. During the clay season, his wrist began controlling the schedule. Alcaraz withdrew in Barcelona before his second-round match. Official tests showed that the issue was worse than expected. Madrid disappeared next. Soon afterward, the defending Roland Garros champion withdrew from Paris, surrendering the chance to defend one of the largest blocks of points on his ranking. Wimbledon followed. That absence carried another painful cost because Alcaraz was not merely skipping a tournament. He was giving up the opportunity to defend points at an event where he had already built a championship record. Rivals could gain ground through victories. Carlos could only watch his total shrink when old results rolled off the 12-month ranking system. That system is simple but unforgiving. A player's ranking is built from results earned across the previous 52 weeks. When a tournament returns, last year's points fall away and must be replaced by new points. Missing the event means there is usually nothing new to replace them. The computer does not care whether the reason is fear, fatigue, or a wrist that refuses to cooperate. Tennis calls this objective. The injured player probably calls it something less polite. By early August, Alcaraz had returned to world number 2 with 8,160 points. Alexander Zverev sat only 70 points behind him. Jannik Sinner occupied the top position with a huge lead, while Felix Auger-Aliassime remained fourth with 4,740 points. Those numbers show two truths at once. Alcaraz was still inside the top three, but his old cushion had been badly damaged. The title threat is therefore about direction. Carlos has not fallen outside the top three yet. However, the protection around his elite place is disappearing, and a long absence would open the door wider with every major event. Rankings do not collapse only when one rival passes. They collapse when a player cannot replace an entire season of valuable results. Think about the emotional swing. In March, Alcaraz held the world number 1 ranking and a 2,800-point advantage over Sinner in the live standings. 5 months later, Sinner had moved far ahead, Zverev was breathing on Carlos's neck, and discussions had changed from domination to survival. That is not a normal dip. It is a season being rewritten by one injured joint. Nobody should confuse sympathy with weakness. Alcaraz made the responsible choice when he said he needed to listen to his body and avoid damage that could affect his future. At 23, he has years of tennis ahead of him. A rushed comeback might protect a few ranking points today while creating a far larger medical problem tomorrow. Yet professional tennis punishes patience. Sponsors want visibility, tournaments want stars, broadcasters want the rivalry, fans want Alcaraz against Sinner under the lights. Each careful week of recovery may be smart for his career, but it also lets the sport move forward without him. That contradiction sits at the center of this heartbreaking story, but here is the detail most people still get wrong about Alcaraz's ranking danger. It is not simply about losing the number 2 position to Zverev. The deeper threat is entering the US Open, short of matches, short of confidence, and unable to control what happens when another mountain of points comes under attack. 70 points can disappear in a single afternoon. One round at a Masters event can change that gap. Still, falling from second to third would not itself remove Alcaraz from the elite trio. The more serious question begins after that. How quickly can the players below him build enough momentum to turn a temporary injury slide into a full top 3 exit? Auger Aliassim's total remained more than 3,000 points behind Alcaraz in early August. That is a large distance. No honest ranking breakdown should pretend otherwise. Nevertheless, Carlos must continue defending points while injured, and the chasing group has months to collect results. A gap looks safe until one player cannot enter tournaments and another starts reaching finals. Picture the draw consequences. The top 4 seeds are protected from meeting one another before the semifinals at a Grand Slam. A fall below 4th can place a player into a quarterfinal against one of the leading names. Dropping even farther can create an early collision with Sinner, Zverev, Djokovic, or another dangerous contender before Carlos has found his rhythm. Seeding is not a decorative number beside a name, it shapes the road. For Alcaraz, that road matters more after an injury. A healthy version can beat anyone from any position. An underprepared version may need easier opening rounds to rebuild timing and trust in the wrist. Instead, a weaker seed could hand him longer rallies, heavier hitters, and more physical matches before his body has settled into Grand Slam pressure. The US Open makes that concern louder. New York is hot, noisy, and physically demanding. Hard courts punish the body differently from clay and grass. Returns arrive quickly. Late matches can stretch deep into the night. If Alcaraz enters without enough competitive tennis, his first week could become a medical examination disguised as a tournament. Every forehand would be watched. Each grimace would become a headline. One visit from the trainer would set social media on fire. Apparently, the internet now holds a medical degree whenever a champion shakes his hand after a rally. His team must therefore solve an ugly puzzle. They need enough practice to restore confidence, enough matches to rebuild sharpness, and enough rest to prevent another setback. Those goals pull in different directions. Practice cannot fully copy match tension. Competition creates risk. Rest protects the wrist but leaves the game cold. There is also the mental battle. Alcaraz plays with freedom when he trusts his body. He attacks impossible balls, changes direction at speed, and creates angles that make sensible tennis look painfully boring. Wrist pain can steal that freedom even after the tissue improves. A player may be medically cleared while still fearing one violent swing. That hesitation can change everything. The forehand arrives a fraction later. The serve loses a little commitment. Defensive movement becomes safer. Opponents notice. Professional players do not need a written invitation to attack weakness. They see one guarded motion and send every heavy ball toward the same side until doubt becomes a tactical target. Sinner's rise adds another layer. Their rivalry has become the center of the men's game. Alcaraz leads their head-to-head, and their greatest matches have pushed both men beyond normal limits. Fans were promised a new era built around their speed, power, courage, and contrast. Instead, injuries have repeatedly threatened to interrupt the rivalry just when it should be reaching its peak. That is the cruel irony. Tennis finally found 2 young stars capable of filling the enormous space left by Federer, Nadal, and the later years of Djokovic. Then the calendar began demanding more matches, longer Masters events, and almost constant travel. The sport found its future and immediately started feeding that future into a grinder. The Professional Tennis Players Association raised concern after a wave of withdrawals from the Canadian Open. Its analysis pointed to increases in upper body and arm injuries during early 2026. The group argued that the expanded 12-day Masters format and crowded schedule had reduced proper recovery time. Alcaraz's wrist became the most famous example of a much wider complaint. Players have criticized the system before. Longer Masters tournaments may create more content, more ticket sessions, and more broadcast days. They also keep athletes away from home for extended periods while adding training and waiting days around matches. Officials can say players control their schedules, but mandatory event rules and ranking pressure make that freedom feel rather imaginary. On paper, a player can skip. In reality, the points table sends an invoice. Alexander Zverev publicly suggested returning Masters events to 1 week. His argument was direct. Shorter events would ease calendar pressure and help players stay healthy. That view gained weight when Alcaraz, Sinner, Djokovic, and other leading names withdrew from Canada. A premium tournament without its premium stars begins to resemble a restaurant proudly displaying an empty menu. Tour officials face their own problem. Events need strong fields to satisfy fans, sponsors, and television partners. Reducing requirements might produce more withdrawals. Maintaining the current load may produce more injuries. Either choice carries a cost, but only the players absorb that cost in their bodies. Alcaraz's situation exposes the contradiction perfectly. The tour wants him everywhere because he sells tickets. His ranking also depends on appearing often enough to replace points. Yet the physical demand of constant competition can remove him from every event at once. Tennis has created a system where protecting the product may require using less of it. Reactions around Carlos have mixed concern with patience. His own public message emphasized listening to his body and doing what was best for the future. That sentence mattered. It showed that the team understood the danger of turning one season's ranking fight into a lasting injury cycle. Supporters largely accepted the withdrawals because they remembered what happened to other stars who played through pain. Nadal built an immortal career, but his body paid a brutal price. Juan Martín del Potro repeatedly fought wrist injuries that interrupted a career capable of producing many more major titles. Dominic Thiem never fully recovered his old level after a serious wrist problem. Those examples hover over every decision. No two injuries are identical. Comparing medical outcomes directly would be careless. However, the history of tennis makes one lesson obvious. Wrist problems deserve respect. The modern forehand creates enormous speed through rotation, timing, and acceleration. Even a small weakness can become serious when thousands of explosive swings are repeated under match stress. Former players understand that fear. They know confidence cannot be separated from health. A champion returning from injury is not only asking whether the wrist can survive. He is asking whether he can strike the ball without thinking about survival. That difference separates ordinary recovery from a true comeback. Fans have divided into two camps. One side wants Alcaraz back as soon as doctors clear him, arguing that competitive rhythm before New York is essential. Another group wants him to abandon the ranking chase completely until the wrist feels perfect. Both positions come from loyalty. Neither side must live with the pain. Here is where the story turns from heartbreaking to deeply frustrating. Alcaraz did almost everything right at the beginning of 2026. He improved his serve, won the Australian Open, stayed unbeaten through Doha, and reclaimed the summit. His reward was not control. It was another calendar demanding that his body prove itself again every few weeks. Improvement on serve had been one of the clearest signs of his growth. Through his first 12 matches of the year, he won more than 90% of his service games. First serve numbers improved, second serve points became stronger, and shorter holds helped protect his energy. Carlos was becoming more efficient, not merely more spectacular. That development made the injury especially painful. He had addressed one of the weaknesses that could determine his long-term rivalry with Sinner. Then the wrist removed his chance to test that improved game across clay, grass, and the North American summer. Progress continued in the practice room, perhaps, but rankings award nothing. For beautiful training sessions, the medical unknown remains central. Public updates can confirm a withdrawal or describe the injured area, but they rarely reveal every detail of recovery. Fans do not know exactly how the wrist responds after a full serving session. Outsiders cannot measure soreness the following morning. Only Alcaraz and his medical team can judge whether the risk has truly fallen. That uncertainty should stop anyone from declaring an exact return date. It should also prevent claims that his top 3 exit is already guaranteed. The immediate ranking numbers do not support that conclusion. What they do support is a clear warning. The longer he remains out, the harder the defense becomes, and the less control he has over the chase behind him. 3 questions remain unanswered. First, can he return before the US Open with enough time to play meaningful matches? Second, will his wrist tolerate the speed and repetition of hard-court tennis? Third, can he protect his ranking without making a decision that threatens the rest of his career? Each answer changes the story. If Carlos returns early and wins, the panic cools immediately. Ranking points arrive, seeding remains protected, and confidence grows before New York. Should he return and feel pain, the setback could end his US Open hopes and raise much darker questions. If he waits, his health gains time while rivals gain opportunity. There is no painless option. Alcaraz now faces that mature decision unusually early. At 23, he already owns the trophies of a veteran. His body has also experienced the workload of repeated deep runs, 5-set battles, global travel, and constant expectation. Youth helps recovery, but it does not make tendons, joints, and bones indestructible. People see his speed and assume endless energy. That is the trap. Explosive movement creates explosive force. Every sliding recovery, stretched forehand, and desperate passing shot asks the body to perform near its limit. Alcaraz makes those moments look joyful, so viewers can forget the physical bill arriving afterward. Only honest testing can decide. Tournament decisions will follow. A smaller warm-up event could offer matches without the immediate pressure of a major. A Masters return would provide stronger competition but increase intensity. Going directly into the US Open would preserve recovery days while leaving him dangerously short of live points. Draw timing also matters. Seedings are determined by the ranking before an event. Even a small move can shift which quarter contains which star. Zverev passing Alcaraz would change the order near the top, although both would remain protected from meeting Sinner until the semifinals if seeded inside the leading four. The real danger grows if the absence extends beyond New York. Autumn includes major opportunities in Asia and Europe, followed by the race toward the ATP Finals. Players beneath Carlos can accumulate points while he faces decisions about travel, surface changes, and recovery. One missed block becomes two, and suddenly a large gap begins to look less comfortable. The final verdict is not that Alcaraz has already lost his place among the world's best three. The verdict is that injury has taken away his safety margin, handed control to the calendar, and transformed every comeback choice into a wager involving points, health, and the future of tennis's brightest rivalry. Hope remains stronger than panic. Carlos has already shown that he can rebuild parts of his game quickly. His improved serve proved he learns. His major record proved he handles pressure. Most importantly, his decision to listen to his body proved that he understands a long career matters more than one frightened attempt to protect a number. Still, the next few weeks may define his season. A healthy return can stop the slide and restore the conversation about titles. Another withdrawal will deepen the ranking pressure. A setback during competition could force everyone to accept that 2026 is no longer about chasing Sinner, but preparing Alcaraz for a complete reset. That would hurt. Fans waited for this rivalry. Tournaments built around it. Tennis promoted it as the new heartbeat of the sport. Watching one half struggle from a treatment room while numbers fall each Monday feels colder than losing a final, because at least a final gives the player a chance to fight. Alcaraz deserves that chance again, not a rushed appearance, not a public relations comeback. He deserves to walk onto court, grip the racket without fear, and play the fearless tennis that made the world believe the impossible was normal. If he returns healthy, the ranking can be rebuilt. If the wrist fails again, the entire season changes. Tennis has seen champions lose points before, but rarely has a fall felt this cruel at only 23. Watch this space. Drop the word "wait" in the comments if Alcaraz should protect his wrist, or "play" if he should fight for his ranking now. Tell us which choice you would make. This story is still developing. Subscribe so you do not miss the next Alcaraz update, and hit that like button so every tennis fan understands what is truly at stake.